So, shalom, brothers and sisters, everywhere you are today. This is Eugene from Kenya. So, today I want to address a serious issue, and I know it's always been on the table. It's always been something of a great debate. So, there's this man who actually he makes sense according to the things that he explains. So, the guys try to explain the reason as to why the new generation, the people of us, Generation Z, and the 20th century people and the 19th century people, we still deserve to be reparated, because our forefathers went through a lot of atrocities. You can imagine at the time during slave trade. Imagine the bones of African which were found in the Trans-Saharan deserts, thousands and thousands. So there are a lot of things that happened, including the transatlantic trade, which holds 90% of African slaves who were transferred to other parts of European countries. So this is an important topic that I want to address today. So generally, this guy explains the reason as to why we Africans of this generation, we deserve to be reparated in as much as our ancestors are the one who went through the atrocities. Also, I want you to watch the video, and after that, I'll show you the reason as to why we really need to be reparated, because I have the facts that I did research and find out. So let's watch the video, and then I'll show you the reason as to why we deserve to be reparated as Africans. So thank you. Disclaimer: kindly be kind to your comments. You don't have to agree with everything that we say, but you're allowed to air out your comments. But again, be kind with your comments. We don't have to agree, but at the end of the day, let's be human. That's what rules us. Let's practice humanity with the way we address each other. So let's watch the video.
You ask a good question for somebody that's never heard of the concept of debt. But I bet if your parents died and you inherit their house, you would understand that if they still had a mortgage on that house, you would owe that bank money. The bank wouldn't just say, you know what, the people that borrowed this money are no longer here, so here, you take the deed to the house, it's yours. That's not how it works. You pay the bank now. Otherwise, the bank will take the house, and America is that house. You and I have the great fortune of living in the wealthiest nation in the world. Whether you love America or not, we have a lot of advantages being in America. And that is due in large part to the unpaid labor of enslaved people. And their ancestors, people who are alive today, hold that deed and are still owed that debt. One last thing, we already have paid reparations. America paid reparations after slavery was abolished to the former owners of slaves to compensate them for their lost property. So we have demonstrated an ability to pay reparations. Now it is time, long overdue, to pay reparations to the right people.
So, pals, I understand that this is a great area of debate, and as a result, I didn't just want to, talk to you, hearing what I think, but these are the facts that I think the reason as to why we need to be reparated as the Black community. So, I did my research, and as you can see, I jotted down some notes. I think you can see them, and these are the reasons as to why we have to be reparated as Africans. And the following are the reasons. Number one, we have the historical injustices. You see, reparations are seen as a way to address the historical injustices of slavery, which had a profound and lasting impact on the African community. Yeah, so we as African communities, especially our brothers and sisters from the diaspora, the African Americans, they faced through a lot of atrocities. You can remember the post-traumatic syndrome that most of them have because of systemic racism that happens today, and how they cope up with such kind of things, because that's something that still goes on. And the historical injustices, you can imagine you're told that your forefather was being chained, some of them were castrated. So such kind of things makes you feel like we really need to be compensated as the Black community. Also, we know that it's the African Americans who have built the whole of Europe. The African Americans are the people who have built USA. And most of these the most of these resources that they have built in the United States and Europe are in the hands of the African Americans who have built them. So they never found any share for doing these kind of activities and making the United States to be a greater place. Because even if you see today, a person who goes to United States because of how it looks will want to stay there as compared to Africa. Africa, it's great, yes, but when you look at how United States is, when you look at geographically how it is, the buildings and everything, the technology, one would love to stay in the United States. That's a fact. But who are people behind these things? The people who are behind these things are the African Americans. So these historical injustices, as they worked in the farms of the white people, as they worked on the plantations of these colonizers, it's injustice because they haven't been paid for these things. So the second reason is we still have lingering effects. The legacy of slavery and segregation, such as systemic racism, economic disparities, and educational inequalities, still affects the black community today. It is until 19th century when we had the black community championing the education, because the white community, sorry to say, I don't know how to put it, but the white community showed a number of graduates as compared to the black community. And this is because of unequal opportunities in studies, because you have to pay for a lot of fees, which turns out that the African Americans could not afford. Now, having championed these things like equal education, the civil rights movements in the United States after the end of slavery, that's 17th century back then, that's when Africans started taking chances, not Africans, but African Americans and the entire Africans started taking chances in education. And so with this type of racism, which Africans or African Americans were being not allowed to go to schools, has created a disparity in also wealth creation. So as a result, you see, African Americans, we are still a little bit behind, because the white people were there in schools while we were working on the plantations. So you understand there won't be equal opportunities when it comes to things like jobs. You understand that? So this is a factor, because some things are still lingering up to date. The third factor is wealth gap. Reparations can help reduce the wealth gap between black and white Americans, providing economic opportunities and advancement for black families. So just as I have explained, you see, due to this wealth gap, the disparity between the two communities, it is true that we need to be compensated, because it is the blacks who worked day and night to build the United States. They worked day and night to build the Europe itself. So we need to be compensated. A lot of wealth that African American created, the black community created, went to the colonizers. That's why there's a huge disparity between African Americans and the colonizers or the white people. So research was done. Turns out that the white community are 10 times or 12 times richer than the black community. When you go to a family, one white family is richer, its wealth, it's so richer 12 times than even 5 black families when put together collectively. So you understand that. So there is a wide disparity between the two communities that we need to understand, and these things are caused by, historically, when you just date back on time when slavery was still the fish on the pond. So this thing still affects us up to date. Also, we have symbolic recognition. Reparation serves as a symbolic acknowledgement of the past wrongs and commitments to rectify them. Yes. Why should African Americans or the black community be compensated? Because it acts as a symbolic recognition that what happened is wrong. Of course, there are quite a number of reparations that occurred. I remember the end of slave trade, when slave trade was abolished in the United States, and where the the legitimate trade came in, you see Africans, not Africans, but they are, that time Africans still, they were allowed to work freely so that they can get these jobs. They can be paid as compared to being forced. But you see, that time when the slave trade was ended, civil rights movements, the church, they came together and they wanted to end slave trade. That's transatlantic slave trade. So the slave leaders, the colonizers, paid some slave owners. They reparated them for their losses because this was their source of income. Now, turns out that they paid the wrong people. The people who were supposed to be paid were the African Americans who served in the plantations, the African Americans who were castrated, the African Americans who women were being raped. You understand? Some of them were being humiliated. So those things were so sad. Turns out that the people who were paid were the slave owners, but not the slave themselves, the people, the Africans who worked with their blood and sweat to build the United States, to build Europe. So you understand, Africans really need to be reparated. I know it's a point of argument because, some people will say that, African played part in, in trans-Saharan trade, the Arabs on the whole thing. Let me tell you, the Arabs, they have a different story. And still up to date, I'm sorry to say this, the Arabs play part in modern slavery. Yes, it still goes on, but that's not a topic of today. That's something we'll talk about later. Another thing is inherited disadvantages. So many argue that the current generation of black people inherited the disadvantages stemming from historic slavery and discrimination. Yeah, it's something that we still Africans, we have to deal with it, and African Americans still have to deal with it because to some extent it still goes up to date. So those are things that we inherited, like disadvantages. When you go somewhere, systemic racism, you can't afford a thing because you're black. You can't buy a car because you're black. People perceive you as you're poor because you're black. So those are the inherited disadvantages that happens to us until to date. Now, the last factor that I'll say is we have the international precedents. Reparations have been paid for historical injustices in other parts of the world, setting a precedent for slavery and discrimination. Yes, so there are precedents that were made in the past. As I have said, reparations happened. Reparations need to be there because when you calculate the amount of money that we Africans or we, the African American or the black community that needs to be compensated, it's way much a lot of money. It's way much a lot of wealth when you try to calculate it. You can try to measure 400 years ago, 500 years ago when African Americans were building United States. So it's a lot of money. So that's not just the end. There are some things that even wealth cannot pay. And I'm glad that we Africans, we are taking part in ensuring that justice prevails. And in as much as we were not there during, it was our forefathers, but we have to be compensated. It's like, how will I put it? It's like transfer of an asset. For example, you inherit something from a person. So when they die, it's yours. Our forefathers worked so hard. They will be proud when they hear that it's their sons, their grandchildren who are reaping the benefits, in as much as they're not there. Of course, when a person dies, the people who follow them are the one who acquire the resources. That's what happens because that's the nature of inheritance, and it's something that happens regardless of race, regardless of where you are. So guys, tell me what you think in the comment section, and as I say, there is a disclaimer. Kindly be kind with your comments. I know we don't have to disagree to some things, but just be kind to your comments. It doesn't cost a dime to be kind. Being kind is free. So guys, it's Eugene from Kenya. I congratulate you. I salute you for my subscribers. I'm on my way to 500 subscribers, and I really appreciate your support. So Thanks to all my fans in the United States, of course, they're my biggest fans, followed by my fans in the United Kingdom, Canada, my African friends, Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, Nigeria. I salute you. My friends from Caribbean, my friends from Barbados, I salute you all. Always know that it's Eugene from Kenya. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.